All right, ready for a deep dive into something we rarely think about? Today, it's all about those internal states. You know, the behind-the-scenes stuff our brains are managing constantly.
Yeah, things like temperature.
Thirst and
that nagging hunger.
yeah, that hits at the worst times.
It really is amazing how much is going on under the hood.
I know, right?
We're talking about systems so complex and vital, they're basically what keeps us alive.
And we're not just talking about, like, feeling hot or thirsty.
Yeah.
We've got chapters from PSYC textbooks and a stack of research papers here.
Oh, wow.
We're going to break down the how and why your brain acts like an internal thermostat, a thirst-quenching sensor, and even the ultimate energy balance guru.
Exactly. Buckle up because we're about to uncover the science behind those cravings, those urges, and how your body works overtime to stay in equilibrium.
First things first, let's define this concept of homeostasis.
Okay.
Sounds fancy, but it's actually pretty straightforward.
It is. Think of it like this. Homeostasis is your body's constant effort to maintain a stable internal environment. Temperature, fluid balance, blood sugar levels, they all need to stay within a pretty narrow range for everything to function properly.
So it's like our bodies are constantly walking a tightrope, making tiny adjustments to stay balanced.
That's a great analogy. And the stakes are high because even small deviations from these ideal set points can have big consequences for our health.
Okay, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
how does the brain actually orchestrate all of this? Enter drive theory.
Drive theory proposes that when your body needs something like food or water, it creates an internal state of tension, a drive that pushes you to take action and satisfy that need.
So when I'm feeling parched, that's my body's way of saying, hey, you need some H2O stat.
Precisely. And that thirst drives you to find water and drink it.
But I bet there's more to it than that, right?
Yeah.
What about those times when I'm not actually needing anything, but still feel a strong urge?
Yeah.
Like wanting a sugary treat even when I'm full.
You've hit on a key limitation of drive theory. It's great for explaining those basic physiological needs, but it struggles to explain behaviors that aren't tied to obvious tissue needs, like cravings, social connection, or even thrill-seeking.
So our brains are motivated by more than just keeping ourselves happy.
Absolutely. We're complex beings driven by a whole symphony of factors, some deeply rooted in our biology, others shaped by our experiences and environment.
Okay, I'm starting to see the complexity here. Let's get into the specifics. How about temperature regulation? How does our brain act as an internal thermostat?
The hypothalamus, a tiny but mighty region in your brain, is the key player here. Think of it as your body's command center for temperature control.
Okay.
It receives signals from temperature receptors throughout your body, constantly monitoring your internal temperature.
So it's like a thermostat that's constantly measuring the room temperature.
Exactly. And if the temperature deviates from that ideal set point, the hypothalamus kicks into action, triggering responses to bring it back into balance.
Like sweating when we get too hot or shivering when we're cold.
You got it. It's an incredible system that works tirelessly to keep our internal temperature stable, even when the outside world throws us curveballs.
Okay, on to another essential element. Thirst. What's the story there?
Thirst is actually more nuanced than you might think. There are two main types, each with its own triggers and mechanisms.
Okay, lay it on me. What are these two thirst culprits?
First, there's osmotic thirst. This is triggered when the salt concentration outside your cells increases.
Okay.
This pulls water out of the cells, creating an imbalance that your brain interprets as thirst.
So that's why that bag of salty chips makes you reach for a drink. It's not just because they're tasty.
Exactly. Your body is trying to restore that balance by bringing in more water. Then we have hypovolemic thirst, which is all about maintaining proper blood volume.
Okay, hypovolemic thirst. What causes that one?
This one kicks in when your blood volume drops, maybe due to sweating, bleeding, or simply not drinking enough fluids.
So this system is all about ensuring our blood keeps flowing properly.
You got it, and it's a vital system because maintaining adequate blood volume is essential for transporting oxygen and nutrients throughout the body.
That's incredible. Now onto the big one. Hunger.
Yeah.
What's going on in my brain when my stomach starts growling?
Hunger is the result of a complex interplay of brain regions, hormones, and neural signals. It's a bit like an orchestra with multiple instruments playing their parts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Who are the key players in this hunger symphony?
Well, one of the first instruments to chime in is your liver. When your body is running low on glucose, its primary fuel source, the liver sends signals to the brain via the vagus nerve, basically saying, hey, we need more fuel here.
So my liver is like my personal hunger alarm.
In a sense, yes. Then we have your stomach, which isn't just about churning food when it's empty. It releases a hormone called ghrelin, which is a powerful hunger signal that travels to the brain.
So ghrelin is the culprit behind those intense hunger pangs that make it impossible to focus on anything else.
Exactly.
But how does our brain know when to stop eating?
That's where leptin steps in. Leptin is a hormone produced by fat cells that acts like a satiety signal. It basically tells your brain, hey, we're good here. Plenty of energy stored.
Leptin, the I'm full hormone. Interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just these hormones, right? I mean, I've definitely experienced eating way past feeling full, especially when there's a delicious dessert calling my name.
You bring up a crucial point. It's not just about hormones. All of these signals from the liver, the stomach, the fat cells, they all converge in a specific region of the brain called the hypothalamus.
The hypothalamus,
Yeah.
our internal thermostat, and now also the conductor of the hunger symphony.
Exactly. The hypothalamus is the ultimate control center, integrating all of these hunger and satiety signals to determine whether you feel hungry or full. But we can't forget the role of taste in all of this. Imagine biting into a juicy burger or savoring a slice of chocolate cake. Those pleasurable sensations also play a role in driving our eating behaviors.
Okay, taste, that definitely plays a part in my food choices.
And it's not just about pleasure. Your tongue is covered in taste receptors located within taste buds. These receptors detect different tastes, sweet, salty, sour, bitters, and umami, and send signals to your brain, creating a symphony of flavor.
Umami, that's the savory, meaty taste, right? I love that one. But how does the brain actually decipher all these different tastes?
It's fascinating. The brain uses something called labeled line coding, which is a fancy way of saying that each taste has its dedicated pathway to the brain. It's like having separate phone lines carrying different messages.
So each taste has its own direct line to the brain. That's so cool. But taste isn't just about pleasure and distinguishing flavors, right? It also helps us avoid things that could be harmful.
Exactly. Think about it. Bitterness is often associated with toxins, so our brains are wired to be wary of bitter tastes, potentially protecting us from ingesting something dangerous. There's a remarkable anecdote about how researchers used this principle for predator control.
Oh, tell me more about this.
They were trying to stop wolves and coyotes from preying on sheep, so they laced sheep carcasses with lithium chloride, a substance that makes animals sick after just one taste of the tainted carcass. The predators developed a strong aversion to the taste of sheep, associating it with feeling ill. They basically learned to avoid sheep altogether.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like they rewired the wolf's taste preferences so our brains are incredibly adaptable,
Yeah,
constantly learning and associating tastes with experiences.
absolutely. Our brains are constantly forming these connections, shaping our preferences and behaviors in ways we may not even realize.
This is blowing my mind. We've covered homeostasis, drive theory, temperature, thirst, and hunger. And it seems like our brains are working overtime to keep everything in balance. But what happens when these systems go haywire?
That's when we see issues like obesity and eating disorders emerge, situations where those carefully orchestrated mechanisms get disrupted. But that's a conversation for later.
Okay, you heard it here, folks. We're just getting started. This deep dive is going to take us even further into the fascinating world of internal states and how they shape our lives. Stay tuned for more.
It really is a testament to the intricate dance between our biology and behavior.
So we've talked about all these individual systems like temperature, thirst, hunger.
Yeah.
But how do they all work together? I mean, is it just chaos in there, or is there some sort of grand plan?
Well, it's definitely not chaos. What's fascinating is that homeostasis, that balancing act we discussed, isn't just a static state. Your body is constantly adjusting and adapting to maintain that balance.
So it's more like a dynamic equilibrium, always in flux,
Yeah.
but striving for that sweet spot.
Exactly. It's like a tightrope walker, constantly making small corrections to stay upright. And the nervous system plays a key role in this ongoing balancing act.
Oh, right. The nervous system, it's like the body's communication network,
Right.
carrying messages back and forth to keep everything running smoothly.
Precisely, it receives sensory information from the body, processes it, and then sends out commands to adjust things as needed. It's all about feedback loops.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections here. Can you give me an example of how this works in practice?
Sure, let's go back to temperature regulation. When your body temperature rises, sensory receptors in your skin and internal organs detect that change.
Okay.
They send that information via nerves to the hypothalamus, which, as we discussed, is like the body's thermostat.
And the hypothalamus compares that information to the body's ideal temperature, that set point.
Exactly. If the body temperature is too high, the hypothalamus sends out commands through the nervous system to trigger cooling mechanisms like sweating.
So it's like a constant loop sensing, processing, respond. It's amazing how much is happening without us even realizing it.
It really is, and this same principle applies to countless other internal states,
Wow.
from blood pressure to heart rate to blood sugar levels.
This is making me appreciate just how much our bodies are doing behind the scenes to keep us functioning properly.
But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about something that can throw a wrench into these finely tuned systems. Drugs.
Drugs. How do they fit into all of this?
Well, drugs can have a profound impact on the brain's reward system, which is intimately tied to motivation. And internal states, think about it. Behaviors that are essential for survival, like eating and drinking, are inherently rewarding.
Right, because they satisfy those basic drives we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And when you engage in pleasurable activities, your brain releases dopamine, that feel-good neurotransmitter in the reward pathway.
So dopamine is like the brain's way of saying, hey, that was good, do that again.
Exactly. It reinforces those behaviors that are important for survival. But here's the thing. Many drugs of abuse, like cocaine and heroin, hijack this reward system.
So it's like they create a shortcut to pleasure, bypassing the need for actual rewarding behaviors.
They do. These drugs cause a massive surge of dopamine in the reward pathway, creating an intense artificial high. And this can be incredibly addictive because the brain quickly learns to crave that dopamine rush.
And that's how people get hooked, right? They chase that high, needing more and more of the drug to achieve the same effect.
That's right. Over time, the brain adapts to these drug-induced dopamine surges, leading to tolerance. And when someone tries to stop using the drug, they experience withdrawal symptoms.
So it's like the body is rebelling against the absence of the drug, right?
It's more like the body is trying to reestablish that homeostatic balance we talked about. It's a painful process because the brain has become reliant on the drug to function.
This is pretty heavy stuff. So drugs mess with the reward system, leading to addiction and all sorts of problems. But is there any lasting damage? I mean, can drugs actually change the brain itself?
That's the scary part. Chronic drug use can absolutely change the structure and function of the brain. It can cause changes in the reward pathway, making it hypersensitive to drug-related cues and less responsive to natural rewards.
So even everyday things that used to bring joy, like spending time with loved ones or achieving a goal, become less rewarding.
That's one of the devastating consequences of addiction. It's like the drug has hijacked the brain's reward system, making it incredibly difficult for someone to experience pleasure from anything other than the drug itself.
Wow, this is making me realize that addiction is about so much more than just willpower. It's a complex interplay of biology, behavior, and the powerful effects of drugs on the brain.
Exactly, and it highlights the importance of understanding these systems and the potential risks involved when those systems get disrupted.
So where do we go from here? What can we do with all of this information about how our brains regulate these vital internal states? It can feel pretty overwhelming.
Well, for starters, it underscores the importance of making healthy choices that support our body's natural ability to maintain balance.
Like getting enough sleep, eating a balanced diet, and managing stress. Are those things really that powerful?
They are. These lifestyle factors have a profound impact on our internal states and overall well-being. They help our brains function optimally, making it easier to regulate those systems we've been discussing.
Okay, so those aren't just empty platitudes. They're actually backed by science. But what about when things are more serious, like in the case of addiction or eating disorders?
That's when seeking professional help is crucial. These are complex conditions that often require specialized interventions to address the underlying biological and psychological factors at play.
This has been incredibly insightful. I'm starting to see these internal states not as mysterious forces acting upon us, but as processes we can influence even if indirectly.
That's a great takeaway. While we may not have complete conscious control over these systems, we're not simply passive passengers by understanding how they work. We can make choices that support our body's natural ability to maintain balance.
It's empowering to realize that we have more agency than we might think, but I'm also starting to wonder about the ethical implications of all this. I mean, if we can manipulate these systems with drugs, what's to stop us from trying to control other aspects of our biology, like our mood or even our personality?
That's a profound question, and one that deserves careful consideration as our understanding of the brain deepens and our technological capabilities advance. Well, it's fanning. We're entering uncharted territory with both incredible potential and inherent risks. perhaps that's a topic for another deep dive.
Definitely. There's so much more to explore, but for now, let's move on to those disruptions we mentioned earlier. We've talked about how these systems work when they're functioning properly, but what happens when things go awry? Let's delve into the world of obesity and eating disorders. All right, so we've laid the groundwork. We know these intricate systems usually keep us running smoothly.
Yeah?
But what happens when they go off the rails?
Yeah.
Let's talk about those disruptions. Obesity and eating disorders.
These are prime examples of how those finely tuned mechanisms we discussed can get thrown out of whack, leading to serious health issues.
Let's start with obesity. It's a huge problem, and it seems like it's about way more than just overeating.
Absolutely. While overconsumption of calories plays a role, it's not the whole story. We need to consider the complex interplay of genetics, environment, and even our gut microbiome.
Okay, break that down for me. How do genes fit into the picture?
Our genes influence things like our metabolism, appetite, and how our bodies store fat. So some people might be predisposed to gain weight more easily than others, even if their lifestyles are similar.
So it's not just about willpower or making better choices. Some people are literally fighting an uphill battle against their own biology.
Exactly. And then there's the environment.
Right.
We're bombarded with cues to eat advertising, easy access to highly palatable, calorie-dense foods. It's a recipe for overconsumption.
And what about the gut microbiome? That's the trillions of bacteria living in our digestive system, right?
Yeah.
I've heard it plays a role in all sorts of things, but how does it tie into obesity?
It's fascinating. Emerging research suggests that the composition of our gut bacteria can influence our cravings, our metabolism, and even how our bodies extract energy from food.
So my gut bacteria could be making me crave that extra slice of pizza.
It could.
That's both intriguing and slightly unsettling.
It is, and it highlights the complexity of obesity. It's not a simple matter of willpower or blaming individuals for their weight. It's a multifaceted issue that requires a holistic approach.
Okay, on to eating disorders, anorexia and bulimia.
Yeah.
These are incredibly serious conditions that are clearly about much more than just food.
You're right, they involve a complex interplay of psychological, social, and biological factors, and they can have devastating consequences for both physical and mental health.
We've talked a lot about hormones and neurotransmitters. Are there any specific imbalances at play in eating disorders?
Researchers believe that serotonin, a neurotransmitter involved in mood regulation, might play a significant role. Studies have shown that individuals with eating disorders often have imbalances in their serotonin systems.
So these serotonin imbalances could contribute to the mood swings, anxiety, and distorted body image often seen in these conditions.
That's the current thinking, and it underscores the complexity of these disorders. They're not just about vanity or wanting to be thin. There are deeper biological and psychological forces at work.
This deep dive has been eye-opening. I'm starting to realize that these internal states, those things we often take for granted, are incredibly intricate and profoundly impactful on our lives.
They are, and we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn about how these systems interact, how they're influenced by our genes, our environment, even our gut bacteria.
Wow. I'm starting to see the world and myself in a whole new light. It's a bit overwhelming, but also empowering.
It is. Knowledge is power. And in this case, it's the power to make informed choices, to seek help when needed, and to advocate for a better understanding of these complex issues.
You listening right now, think about it. Are those late-night cravings really just you? Or is it your sleep-deprived hypothalamus sending out an SOS? Is that stress from work messing with your gut bacteria, setting off a cascade of effects on your mood and eating habits? This deep dive has given you a glimpse behind the curtain. Now it's up to you to keep exploring, to question assumptions, and to take charge of your own health and well-being.
And remember, we're all in this together. The more we understand about these intricate systems, the better equipped we'll be to support each other and create a healthier world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride, but hopefully you've come away with a renewed appreciation for the incredible complexity and resilience of the human body and brain. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.